So today I will be showing you how to crochet this Miffy, and as you can see, you can crochet her in any color that you like. This dress is also removable, so if you want to crochet some overalls, you can too. And what I think the best part of this Miffy is that she stands. As for the materials, you will need white yarn for the Miffy, black yarn for her facial features, and then any color of yarn for the dress. The yarn that you use will also determine the size of your Miffy, so it'll either become bigger or smaller than the one I have pictured here. And then I also recommend that the yarn that you use for the base of the Miffy and her dress be the same type of yarn so that her dress fits appropriately to the Miffy that you crochet. And then as for the hook size, I ended up using a 3mm hook. You might end up using a different hook than the one that I used depending on your yarn. And then you will also need a tapestry needle, a pair of scissors, some stuffing, and then a stitch marker. Here are the abbreviations that I used in the video. You can also find them in the description down below. A few notes before we start crocheting. All the body pieces are crocheted in rounds, so that means that you slip stitch to join at the end of each round and then chain 1 to begin the next round. The dress is crocheted in rows, so that means you chain 1 and then turn your work to start the next row. If you choose, you can crochet in a continuous spiral, but I do recommend keeping the leg portion in rounds because I'm unsure whether or not the stitches will align properly when crocheted in a continuous spiral. Also, one more thing before we move on to the tutorial, I will be crocheting with a pink yarn instead of a white yarn because it shows up better on camera. So start with a magic ring, and you're going to want to put 6 single crochets into that magic ring. So now once you're done, you just want to pull the tail to close the loop. And for this Miffy, we are going to be crocheting in rounds, so that means at the end of every round you are going to want to join the round with a slip stitch into the first stitch, and then to begin every round you want to chain 1. So now we are at the end of round 1, and then that just means we're going to join right here into this first stitch, 1 slip stitch. To begin round 2, chain 1. And in this round we are going to increase into every stitch in the round, so that's essentially 2 single crochets into 1 stitch. So our first stitch is this stitch that we just slip stitched into, so our increase would go into here. Here's our first single crochet, and then the second one, completing the increase. And now we'll just do the same into every stitch in the round. So at the end of the round you should have a total of 12 stitches, and then slip stitch into that first stitch, skipping over the slip stitch and chain 1 of the previous round. So now starting round 3, we're going to chain 1, and then into that first stitch we're going to single crochet 1. So right there, that is our first stitch. So single crochet 1, and then I'm going to mark our first stitch here, and now into the next stitch, increase. And now repeat this pattern of 1 single crochet followed by increase another 5 more times. And now once you reach the end of round 3, slip stitch into the first stitch to join the round. Then now chain 1 to begin round 4. So now round 4 to round 10, we are just going to single crochet 1 into every stitch in the round for a total of 18 stitches at the end of the round. Remember that at the end of each round you want to slip stitch to join the round, and to begin the next round, chain 1. So I'll see you guys back after completing round 10. Okay, so I have just finished round 10, so now starting round 11, start with that chain 1 like always, and then into the next 4 stitches you're going to single crochet 1. And now for the next stitch, we are going to do a decrease, and I like to do invisible decreases, which is just like a regular decrease, but instead of going through both loops, you are going just through the front loops only. So here is my decrease, and then we're just going to repeat this pattern of 4 single crochets followed by a decrease another 2 more times. So slip stitch into the first stitch to join the round. And then now starting round 12, the chain 1, and then we're just going to single crochet 1 into every stitch in the round for a total of 15 stitches. And once you reach the end of the round, slip stitch into that first stitch to join. And now starting our last round, round 13, start with a chain 1, and then we are going to do 3 single crochets. The next stitch we are going to do is a decrease. And repeat this pattern of 3 single crochets followed by a decrease another 2 more times. And now we are going to end the round like we've ended all the other rounds with a slip stitch into the first stitch. So now, since we have finished the ear, we are going to cut a medium tail. Here is the finished ear, and you are going to want to make 2 of those, so like this. To crochet the head, we are going to start with a magic ring of 6 single crochets, just like we did with the ears. After you finish your 6 single crochet, just pull the tail to close the loop. And we are still going to be crocheting in rounds, so slip stitch into the first stitch to join. And then chain 1 to start round 2. Round 2, increase into every stitch in the round for a total of 6 increases. And at the end of the round, you should have a total of 12 stitches. Slip stitch to join. And then chain 1 to start round 3. Round 3, we are going to single crochet into that first stitch. And then into the next stitch, increase. So we're going to want to repeat this pattern of 1 single crochet followed by an increase another 5 more times so you reach the end of the round. At the end of round 3, you should have a total of 18 stitches. Now slip stitch to join. And then chain 1. Round 4, start with 1 single crochet into the first stitch. And then increase into the next stitch. And then I'm marking my first stitch here. So now into the next 2 stitches, we are going to single crochet 1. And then in the next stitch, increase. And then we are going to repeat this pattern of 2 single crochets followed by an increase another 4 more times. After your final set of the pattern, you should have 1 more stitch left, and in that stitch we are just going to single crochet 1. So So now at the end of the round, you should have a total of 24 stitches. And then we are going to slip stitch to join, and then chain 1. For round 5, we're going to single crochet into the next 3 stitches. Into the next stitch, increase. And then repeat this pattern of 3 single crochets, followed by an increase, another 5 more times till you reach the end of the round. At the end of the round, you should have a total of 30 stitches. Slip stitch to join, and then chain 1. So now starting round 6, we are going to single crochet into the next 2 stitches. And then into the next stitch, increase. And then the next 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, we are going to single crochet 1 into each of those stitches. And then after that stitch, we are going to increase into the next stitch. Now repeat this pattern of 4 single crochets followed by an increase another 4 more times. You should have 2 stitches left over. Into these last 2 stitches, single crochet 1. At the end of the round, you should have a total of 36 stitches. Slip stitch to join, chain 1. Now starting round 7, single crochet into the next 5 stitches. So now into the next stitch, increase 1. Then now repeat this pattern of 5 single crochets followed by an increase another 5 more times until you reach the end of the round. At the end of round 7, you should have a total of 42 stitches. Slip stitch to join, and then chain 1. Now starting round 8, which is going to be our last round of increases, we are going to single crochet into the next 3 stitches. Into the next stitch, increase. And then now for the next 6 stitches, we are going to single crochet 1 into each of those stitches. And then into the next stitch, increase. So repeat this pattern of 6 single crochets followed by an increase another 4 more times. You should have 3 stitches left over. Into our last 3 stitches, single crochet 1 into each of those stitches. At the end of the round, you should have a total of 48 stitches. So now just slip stitch to join, and then chain 1. For round 9 through 19, we are going to single crochet 1 into every stitch in the round for a total of 48 single crochets. As a reminder, we want to join at the end of each round with a slip stitch into the first stitch, and then chain 1 to begin the next round. So I'll see you guys after finishing round 19. Welcome back. This is what it looks like after round 19. We have formed a little bowl, as you can see. And then now for the next 3 rounds, we're going to do 3 rounds of decreases. So it's going to form the bottom of the head. So starting round 20, start with that chain 1, and then into the next 3 stitches, single crochet 1. Next, we're going to do a decrease. And then for the next 6 stitches, single crochet 1. And the next stitch we are going to do is a decrease. And then repeat this pattern of 6 single crochets followed by a decrease another 4 more times for a total of 5 times. And you should have 3 stitches left over. Into the last 3 stitches, single crochet 1. At the end of round 20, you should have a total of 42 stitches, and we're going to finish off this round with a slip stitch, and then now chain 1. So for round 21, we're going to do 5 single crochets. Next, do a decrease. And then repeat this pattern of 5 single crochets followed by a decrease another 5 more times for a total of 6 times. So here is what it looks like after round 21, and you should have a total of 36 stitches. So we're going to finish off this round with a slip stitch. So starting round 22, our last round, we're going to do our chain 1, and then into the next stitch, single crochet 1. And then following that, do a decrease. And then now repeat this pattern of 1 single crochet followed by a decrease another 11 more times until you reach the end of the round. Here's what it looks like after round 22, and we're just going to finish off this head with our final slip stitch. And now you could just cut a medium tail. So here is the finished head. It looks a bit square right now, but once we stuff it, it'll round out. And I just cut a medium tail. We're not going to use this to fasten off, we're going to use the tail from the body to fasten off, so if you cut it a little short, it's okay. I just like it a little longer so I could weave it in at the end. Start with a magic ring of 6 single crochets. Now we're just going to pull the tail to close the loop. Slip stitch into that first stitch to join. Chain 1. Now starting round 2, we're going to increase into every stitch. At the end of the round, you should have a total of 12 stitches. Slip stitch to join. And then chain 1. Starting round 3, we're going to start with 3 single crochets. Now into the next stitch, increase. Then repeat this pattern of 3 single crochets followed by an increase another 2 more times until you reach the end of the round. At the end of the round, you should have a total of 15 stitches. So now slip stitch, and then chain 1. Now for round 4 through 9, we're going to do 1 stitch into every stitch in the round for a total of 15 single crochets. So here's what it looks like after completing round 9. I already did my slip stitch, so we're going to do the chain 1 to start the next round. So for round 10, we're going to start with 3 single crochets. And and then our next stitch will be a decrease. Repeat this pattern of 3 single crochets followed by a decrease another 2 more times until you reach the end of the round. At the end of the round, you should have a total of 12 stitches. Join with that slip stitch, and then chain 1. Before we go on to the last round, we're going to want to stuff the arm. For the arm, we're just going to take a little bit of stuffing. This might be too much, but we'll see. And we only want to stuff the bottom, not the whole arm. So you really want to push your stuffing down so that it's more concentrated on the bottom. Okay, so now on to the last round. We're going to start with 2 single crochets. And then the next stitch will be a decrease. Then repeat this pattern another 2 more times. So it will be 2 single crochets followed by a decrease. And then end the round with a slip stitch. So once you finish that slip stitch, we're going to seal the top of the arm, and to do so, we're going to start into this next stitch right here. So put your hook through the second stitch, not the first one. The first one would be the one that we slip stitched through. So this one right here is where we're going to push our hook through. And then we're going to put our hook through the other side. We're going to push it through this stitch right here, which is the last stitch of round 11. So we're just going to try to maneuver our hook to that stitch. And then push it through. And once you've got that, you're going to want to pull your yarn through both of the loops and then complete a single crochet. So now we're going to do the same thing with the other 4 stitches. So into the next stitch here and through the stitch right across from it. Then pull through a loop. And then complete the single crochet. And here's the next stitch, and then the stitch right in front of it. And as for our last stitch, it's a little hard to see, but it's going to be right on the edge, so you could just poke your hook through right here and then pull through a loop and then finish the stitch. So now you're just going to want to cut a medium tail to sew later on. So here is the arm. I folded it in a little bit and then made a little divot here to shape it a bit, and then pushed all the filling to the bottom here. So you're going to want to make another one of these for a total of 2. So we're going to start with the leg / body section, and we're specifically going to start with the right leg because when we're crocheting in rounds, which is what we're doing with this entire Miffy, we get this kind of seam right here from the slip stitches in chain 1. So in order to make the seam a little less visible on the outside, we're crocheting the legs in kind of a mirror kind of way in order to keep the seam, you know, in the inner of the legs rather than on the outside. So if you can see, here is the seam created by those slip stitches, and then on the opposite leg it's also inside here. So if we were to crochet the legs the same way, we would have one seam inside the leg here and one seam on the outside. So that's why we're crocheting them in a mirror kind of way. But that'll make a little more sense once we start crocheting. So to start, we're going to start with a magic ring of 6 single crochets. Once you finish your magic ring, pull the tail to close the loop. And like I mentioned before, we're going to be crocheting in rounds, so slip stitch into that first stitch. Chain 1. So now on to round 2, we are going to do 3 single crochets into the first stitch. So here is our first single crochet into that stitch, and then now we're going to put another one. And then finally one last one to make it our third one. So now into the next stitch we're going to increase, which is only 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So here's our first one and then second one. Go now into the next stitch, single crochet 1. And then we're going to repeat this pattern of 3 single crochets in one stitch, followed by an increase, which is 2 single crochets, and then lastly 1 single crochet into the next stitch. So here is the one with 3 single crochets. So 1, 2, and then 3. In the next stitch, increase. So 1 single crochet, and then the second one. And then lastly, just 1 single crochet into this last stitch. Now to complete the round, we're going to join into the first stitch. And then chain 1 to start the next round. Now starting round 3, we're going to start with 1 single crochet into the first stitch. Now into the next 3 stitches, we're going to do an increase. And then follow that with 3 single crochets. Now we're going to do another 3 increases. And then into these last 2 stitches, we're going to do 1 single crochet each. At the end of this round, you should have a total of 18 stitches. And then now, slip stitch to join, and then chain 1. And then for round 4, we're going to start with 2 single crochets. And then into the next stitch, increase. And then we're going to do 1 single crochet into the next stitch. And then follow that with an increase. And then repeat this pattern one more time, so 1 single crochet into here. And then follow that with an increase. And then we're going to do 4 single crochets. And then the next stitch is an increase. And then that pattern of 1 single crochet followed by an increase again. Into these last 2 stitches, 1 single crochet each. And this is what it looks like at the end of round 4, and you should have a total of 24 stitches. And this right here creates the base, the little bottom of our foot. So we're going to do that slip stitch to join the round, and then chain 1. So now we're on to round 5, and for round 5 we're going to single crochet 1 into every stitch in the round for a total of 24 single crochets. But instead of crocheting normally, how we would go through both the front and back loops, we are only going to go through the back loops only. And this is just for round 5. So here's our first single crochet, and then back loop only, second single crochet, third, and then so on. So this is how it looks like at the end of round 5, and I'm just going to finish it up with that slip stitch. And then chain 1. Now for round 6, we're going to do 1 single crochet into every stitch in the round, just like round 5, for a total of 24 single crochets. But we're going to be crocheting through both loops instead of just the back loops like we did in round 5. So here, both loops, and then our single crochet, both loops, and then single crochet. So just continue this until we reach the end of the round. Here is the end of round 6. We're going to finish it off with the join and then chain 1. So now for round 7, we're going to start with 4 single crochets. Our next stitch is a decrease. And then the next 8 stitches, single crochet 1. And we're going to follow that with 4 decreases. And into the last 2 stitches, we're going to do 1 single crochet each. Here's what it looks like at the end of round 7, and at the end of this round you should have a total of 19 stitches. So you can see that our decreases right here are forming the little toe part of our foot. So now we're just going to finish off with that slip stitch into the first stitch to join the round. And then chain 1. For round 8, we're going to start with 3 single crochets. Our next 2 stitches will be 2 decreases. And then we're going to do 1 single crochet into the next 5 stitches. And then follow that with 2 decreases. And then in our last 3 stitches here, we're going to do 1 single crochet each. At the end of round 8, it should look something like this. We've got our front toe part here and then our little back heel part here. And at the end of the round, you should have a total of 15 stitches. So to finish off this round, our slip stitch into the first stitch, and then chain 1. So now for the next 2 rounds, round 9 through round 10, we're going to do 1 single crochet into every stitch in the round for a total of 15 single crochets. Once you have finished that 15th single crochet, slip stitch to join, and then chain 1. So here's what it looks like at the end of round 10. And then we're going to finish this off with our slip stitch to join the round. Pull it tight, and then we're going to cut a medium tail for weaving in later. So this is what your foot should look like. There will be a slight dip at the bottom of the foot, but that is perfectly normal. This is actually what helps it sit nice and flat. So now we're going to make the left leg, and the left leg is exactly the same as his right leg except for round 7. So crochet from round 1 through round 6 exactly the same as we did for this right leg, and then I'll see you back after completing round 6 to show you how to crochet round 7. So here is the finished round 6 of the left leg. I already did my slip stitch to join, so I'm just going to chain 1 to start round 7. To start round 7, single crochet 1 into the first 2 stitches. Now we're going to follow that with 4 decreases. Now into the next 8 stitches, we are going to single crochet 1 into each of those stitches. Now we're going to do 1 decrease. And then into the last 4 stitches we are going to single crochet 1. At the end of round 7, you should have a total of 19 stitches. Slip stitch to join. And then chain 1. So now starting round 8, we're going to do 3 single crochets, 1 into each of these next 3 stitches. Now we're going to do 2 decreases. Now into the next 5 stitches, single crochet 1. Now follow that with 2 decreases. And then into the last 3 stitches, single crochet 1. At the end of round 8, you should have a total of 15 stitches. So now we're going to slip stitch to join. And then chain 1. For round 9 through 10, we are going to single crochet 1 into every stitch in the round for a total of 15 single crochets. Make sure that you join with a slip stitch and then start round 10 with the chain 1. So once you have reached the end of round 10, we are going to slip stitch into the first stitch to join. So now this ends our left leg, and now we're going to move on to the body part. Now that we have completed both of our feet, we are going to connect them to start forming the body. So to start, we're going to chain 1 with the foot that is on our hook. So chain 1. And then we're going to connect these foot together with a slip stitch. And we are going to slip stitch into the first stitch of this foot over here. And the first stitch is the stitch in front of the slip stitch. So here is the slip stitch right here, where the yarn is coming out of. So that means our first stitch would be this stitch right here. So insert the hook and then make a slip stitch. Pull it tight to tighten the slip stitch, and then chain 1. Now we're going to single crochet 1 into every stitch in this foot for a total of 15 single crochets. Our first single crochet is going to go into that stitch that we slip stitched into. So this stitch right here is going to be the first stitch. So we're going to insert our hook into here and then single crochet. And basically you're going to just single crochet the same way around this whole entire foot. Oh, and do not forget to mark the first stitch of your round so that we don't forget which stitch is our first stitch. Now for the next few stitches, I like to crochet around my tail to secure it in place. So I'm just going to do that for like maybe 4 or 5 single crochets. And then after I finished a few single crochets, I could just hide the tail in the foot so that it's out of the way. And then just continue crocheting on like normal. Once you have finished your final single crochet on this right leg, we're going to move on to crocheting on this chain 1 bridge that connects these 2 feet together. So usually we would just crochet in this bridge like so. But since we have crocheted in rounds, which includes that slip stitch and chain 1, it creates a little gap between the leg and the bridge here. So in order to minimize this gap, we're going to do a decrease. We are going to first insert our hook into that slip stitch that is on this right leg. So it would be right here. We're going to insert our hook right between this gap. So into the gap right here. So this is our slip stitch. And then we're going to pull through a loop and make sure that the loop is tight on your hook. And then we are going to pull through another loop on the back bump of this chain 1. So our back bump is right here. So insert our hook through the back bump, pull through a loop, make sure it's tight on your hook, and then to finish off, pull through a loop through all 3 of the loops on this hook. So 1, 2, and then our 3rd loop. So that completes our decrease. As you can see, the gap is a little smaller than it was before. And since we crocheted through the slip stitch would have loosened a bit. In order to fix that, you could just pull the tail, pull it tight a little bit, and then it should close that slip stitch right up. And now the slip stitch is a bit tighter than it was before. Now we're going to start crocheting on this left leg, and we're going to do the same thing as we did for this right leg. Single crochet 1 in every stitch on this leg for a total of 15 single crochets. And our first single crochet is going to go into the stitch that our chain 1 is coming out of. So if we pull it a little tight, we could see that there's a little yarn here, a little loop, and that is our chain 1. So it is coming out of this stitch right here, so that would be our first stitch that we're going to start crocheting into. So our first single crochet goes into this stitch, and then we're just going to crochet like normal, 1 single crochet into every stitch on this leg. So now once you have finished the last single crochet on this foot, we're going to do the same thing as we did before. We're going to make a decrease into the slip stitch and the chain 1 bridge. So the slip stitch on this foot is this small stitch right here. So insert your needle into that slip stitch. It might be a little difficult, so just slowly wiggle your hook in between the stitch. There we go. And then you're going to pull a loop through that stitch. Pull it tight, and then pull through another loop through the chain 1. And the chain 1 is this stitch right here. So insert your hook. And then pull through a loop. And then that will make 3 loops on our hook, and then pull through all 3 loops. And then here is our decrease. Now that also makes the last stitch of our round. So we're going to slip stitch into the first stitch of the round, which is the one we marked right here. So slip stitch into that stitch to join the round. And then pull tight. So at the end of this round, there should be a total of 32 stitches. Starting round 12, we're going to start with a chain 1. And then into the first stitch, which is the stitch that we slip stitched into, we're going to increase. And then now into the next 7 stitches, single crochet 1 into each of those stitches. Now repeat this pattern of 1 increase followed by 7 single crochets, another 3 more times for a total of 4 times. At the end of round 12, you should have a total of 36 stitches. So now slip stitch into the first stitch to join. and then chain 1. Now starting round 13, we're going to single crochet 1 into every stitch in the round for a total of 36 single crochets. You're going to want to do this for 9 rounds, so until round 21. And just make sure that at the end of your round you're joining with a slip stitch into that first stitch. So here is my slip stitch. And then chain 1 to begin the next round. So now you're going to do 8 more rounds of single crochets, so I'll see you back after completing round 21. Alrighty, so now we have just finished round 21, and before we move on to our last 2 rounds of decreases, we are going to stuff a bit of the legs. So just get a little bit of stuffing. Then we're going to lightly stuff the legs. You don't want to stuff it too much because then the bottom will start protruding out like this. You want to make sure that the bottom stays dipped inwards so that it will be more stable when it stands. So once you have finished stuffing the legs, we're going to move on to our last 2 rounds of decreases. So I already did my slip stitch, so we're going to chain 1. And for round 22, we're going to start with 1 single crochet into the next 4 stitches. Now our next stitch will be a decrease. Then we're going to repeat this pattern of 4 single crochets followed by a decrease another 5 more times for a total of 6 times. At the end of this round, you should have a total of 30 stitches. So we're going to slip stitch to join, and then chain 1. For our final round, round 23, we are going to start with 3 single crochets. So we're going to single crochet 1 into the next 3 stitches. Follow that with a decrease. And then repeat this pattern of 3 single crochets followed by a decrease another 5 more times. At the end of this round, you should have a total of 24 stitches. So now to finish this piece off, we are going to do our final slip stitch. Then now we're going to cut a medium tail for weaving in later on. So now you can gather all your other pieces and then we can finally stuff them all. So once you have all your pieces stuffed, we can finally start sewing them all together. You can sew these pieces together however you like. There is no right or wrong way to sew crochet pieces together. I will just demonstrate the way that I end up sewing it. So I'm going to start with sewing the arm and the body together. So first I'm just going to start with the right arm. Now for the right arm, I'm going to insert my needle into the 10th stitch. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I'm going to insert my needle and thread my yarn through this 10th stitch. Then I am going to align the arm with the stitches on the body. As you can see, the stitches are now aligned together like so, and we're just going to thread our needle back and forth through each of those stitches. And then here we have attached our right arm. For the left arm, I am going to insert my needle into the 21st stitch. So since we have 24 stitches in this round, we're going to count backwards. 24, 23, 22, and then 21. So then insert the needle through this stitch. And then once again, we're going to align our stitches with the body. Then we're going to thread our needle back and forth again. So now we have both of our arms attached. And now we're going to attach the head to the body. So for that, I'm going to use the tail from the body. And since I crocheted in rounds, I'm going to thread my needle first through the back of the next stitch, just so I can tighten that slip stitch, because sometimes it gets loose like that. So I'm just going to thread it back there so that it is nice and tight. And I'm going to do the same thing for the head. To start attaching the head to the body, we are going to first align it to make sure we got the placement right. And since it's plain, you can align it however you want, but since I have a seam here, I want to make sure I keep it centered in the back. And then next, I'm going to find the stitch that is closest to the stitch that my yarn is coming out of. So I have the stitch that my yarn is coming out of right here, and the one directly above it seems to be this stitch, which is also the stitch that this yarn is coming out of. So I'm just going to hold that up here. And now to begin, I'm going to insert my needle into that stitch that is directly above the stitch below. So I'm going to insert it through this way. And then now I'm going to come back out of the next stitch, and the next stitch happens to be my slip stitch. So I'm going to come from behind back out like this. So that completes the first stitch. Now to sew back into the body, we are going to sew into the stitch that our yarn is coming out of. So this is the stitch, so we're going to go in that stitch. And then we're going to go back out the next stitch, just like we did in the head. So the next stitch is this one, so we're going to come back out of that stitch. We want to pull it nice and tight so that there are no gaps. So here we have our single attachment here. Now we're just going to continue that all the way around the head. So that is into the stitch on top that our yarn is coming out of. So we have an attachment here, so we're going to go through this hole and then back out the next stitch. So that would be this one right here. And repeat the same with the body portion. So the stitch that our yarn is attached to, so into this stitch. And then back out the next stitch. And then pull tight. And once you start getting a hang of it, you could just go in and then right back out, like this. In and then right back out. So once you reach the arm part, it's going to be the same thing as back here, but there's just going to be a few more stitches because we have the arm portion here now. So it's the same thing in the stitch that our yarn is coming out of. And then back out the next stitch. And our next stitch are both of these stitches. We're going to go through the stitch on the body and then also through the stitch on the arm. So we're going to go through both of those stitches and then through the head like normal. And I am starting to realize my tail might be a little too short. For now, for the next stitch, again into the previous stitch. So that is also the arm stitch. So we're going to go through both stitches, the arm one and the one on the body. Into both of those stitches. And then now back out through the next two stitches. So here, the body and the arm stitch. Then now the head. And then continue with the arm in through the previous stitch. And then out through the next stitch. So now we're on to our last 2 stitches here. So again, into the stitch our yarn is coming out of. And then out through the next stitch. Okay, so I added on an emergency piece of tail. Hopefully your guys' tail was long enough and you didn't have to do some Frankenstein situation like I did here. So now we're gonna finish off sewing through the arm part. So I have my yarn coming out of the head here, so we're going to go through that last stitch of the arm and then also the stitch on the body. And I have some knots here that I have to pull through. Now out through the next stitch. And since we have sewn through this edge stitch here, it might have loosened a bit, so you could just simply pull the tail tight and that should tighten up that stitch. And now we're just going to continue like normal until we reach this other arm part. So now we have gotten to our final part of sewing, and this might be a little difficult because there is quite a small gap here, so it's a little hard to see what you're doing, but just take it slow, 1 stitch at a time, in one and then out the other. So we're going to go in this stitch right here, and then come out this arm body stitch. And you might want to angle your needle a bit differently to make sure that you catch, well, if you don't catch both of the stitches, you just go through them separately. So here is the body stitch, and then I must also go through the arm stitch. Now do the head. And it will get quite difficult to see what you're doing, so just again take it nice and slow. As for my last stitch on the arm, it is this one, and the connecting body stitch is this one right here. So it is a bit slanted, so you might have to look a little closely to see which stitch is the one that connects to your arm. We're gonna go through this body stitch, and then also through the arm stitch. Pull tight. If the side of your left arm now is a little loose, just pull the tail and it should tighten it right up. Our Miffy is slowly coming together. Right now I have all these loose tails, so I'm going to weave them in so they're out of the way. So now we only have one more body piece to sew on, which is the ears. And the way that I sew the ears is that I stretch it from round 1 to round 2 all the way to round 5 to round 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is the width of my ear. It's going to start here and stretch all the way over here. And that would kind of flatten out the base. Instead of it being round like a circle, it's going to be more like an oval. It's going to kind of be like this. So here I have marked where I want my ear to be placed. The inner edge here is between round 1 and round 2, and the outer edge is between round 5 and round 6. So now all that's left to do is to sew it in place. So I'm going to use the same technique here that I used to attach the head and the body. In one stitch and out the other on the head, and then in one stitch and out the other, same thing on the ear. So I'm going to find the closest stitch that my yarn is coming out of. So I'm going to go in this stitch and then out the next stitch. So in this stitch and then out right here. Now back into the ear, into the stitch that the yarn is coming out of. In this case, it would be the slip stitch. And then out the next stitch. So here we have made our first attachment onto the head. So now we're going to insert our needle into the same stitch that our yarn is coming out of. So right here. And then out the next stitch closest to the next stitch on the ear. So I believe it would be this one for me. And then now into the stitch that our yarn is coming out of. So it would be this one right here. And then out the next stitch. And then pull tight. And then just repeat this all around the ear until you reach back to where we started. So here I have just finished sewing on the right ear. It looks a bit weird right now without the other ear, but basically for the other ear you're just going to want to do the same thing as we did for this ear. Mark the inner edge between round 1 and round 2, and then mark the outer edge between round 5 and round 6. And then just sew this left ear just like how we sewed this right ear. So now you're going to get your black yarn and we are going to sew the face. So here I have marked with my tapestry needles where each part of the face is going to go. This green and dark pink tapestry needle here represents where the top of our eyes are going to go. And that is between round 13 and round 14, and they are 8 stitches apart. So I'm going to start sewing the eyes on. I'm going to poke my needle on the side and then come out where this green tapestry needle is. And then our eyes is a height of 2, so I'm going to go down 2 stitches. 1, 2, and then I'm going to go into this stitch right here. And then I'm going to come back out the top of the eye. Now just continue sewing around these 2 stitches until your eye becomes the thickness that you like. So I am going to go around maybe 2 or 3 more times. I think that is good for me, and then I'll just clean up some of the polyfill that's coming out. So here is my left eye done, and now I'm going to move on to sewing in the mouth. And this light pink tapestry needle here represents where the top of my mouth is going to go. So I'm going to insert my needle back into where my yarn is coming out of, and then come out of where this light pink tapestry needle is. Take that out, and then thread my needle through here. So the start of the mouth is 2 stitches away from the bottom of the eye. So now we're going to go diagonal down 2 rows and across 4 stitches. Starting from here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's our 4th stitch, and we're going to go down 2 rows from the top of the mouth. So 1 and 2. So then that is where the bottom right of our mouth is going to be. And then I'm going to come back out on the bottom left. So we're going to go down 2 rows from where the top is. Just go across, and then that should be where the bottom mouth should go. And then here is our first diagonal cross of the Miffy's mouth or nose. So regardless whether this is a mouth or a nose, we're still going to thread our needle above 2 rows from this stitch right here. So 1, 2, so we're going to go into this stitch, and then we're going to come out of where this dark pink tapestry needle is. And then now we are going to go on to this right eye, and then again, just like the left eye, down 2 rows, and then insert the needle, and that should be where the bottom of your eye is. So once you have finished sewing on the face, just weave your tail ends in. So now our Miffy is finally complete. The only part now left to do is to complete the dress. Now we're going to move on to crocheting the dress, and the dress is going to be crocheted in rows. So starting the first row, we're going to chain 30. So first start our little slip knot and then chain 30. So once you have chained 30, you're going to want to mark that 30th stitch. So get your stitch marker and then put it through that 30th stitch. And now we're going to chain 9 more. So now you should have a total of 39 stitches. So for row 2, we are going to single crochet 30, and we're going to start where this marked stitch is. So we're going to start on the 30th stitch, insert our hook there, and then complete our first single crochet. So now our chain 9 from before creates the little loop for the closure of our dress. So now single crochet 29 more until you reach the end of the row. At the end of row 2, you should have a total of 30 stitches. Now to start row 3, we're going to chain 1 and then turn our work. So now for row 3, we're going to start with 1 single crochet. And then into the next stitch, we're going to do a bobble stitch of 5 double crochets. So to do a bobble stitch, we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into the next stitch, and then pull a yarn through. Then we're going to yarn over and then pull over 2 loops. And then we're going to do that again 4 more times. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull through a loop, and then go through 2 loops. Yarn over, pull through a loop, and then go through 2 loops. I'm going to do that 2 more times. So now you should have a total of 6 loops on your hook. And then we're going to complete the bobble stitch by pulling a yarn through all 6 loops. And then we're just going to push our bobble stitch outwards. And then that will create our little bump. So now into the next stitch, we are going to increase. And then we're going to follow that increase with 4 single crochets. And then into the next stitch, we're going to do an increase. Repeat this pattern of 4 single crochets followed by an increase another 4 more times for a total of 5 times. Into our last 2 stitches, we are going to single crochet 1. At the end of this round, you should have a total of 36 stitches. So starting round 4, chain 1 and then turn your work. So for round 4, we're going to start with 5 single crochets. So single crochet 1 into the next 5 stitches. Into the next stitch, increase. So we're going to repeat this pattern of 5 single crochets followed by an increase another 5 more times for a total of 6 times. At the end of this row, you should have a total of 42 stitches. So now starting in the next row, chain 1 and then turn. So for row 5, we're going to start with 3 single crochets. Now we're going to follow that with an increase. And then we're going to follow that with 6 single crochets. And then into the next stitch, we're going to increase. Repeat this pattern of 6 single crochets followed by an increase another 4 more times for a total of 5 times. Now into your last 3 stitches, single crochet 1. At the end of this row, you should have a total of 48 stitches. Now to start round 6, we're going to do that chain 1 and then turn. So now we're going to start with 7 single crochets, so into the next 7 stitches, single crochet 1. Now into the next stitch, increase. Repeat this pattern of 7 single crochets followed by an increase another 5 more times for a total of 6 times. At the end of this row, you should have a total of 54 stitches. So now starting row 7, chain 1 and then turn. So now into the next 4 stitches, single crochet 1. Into the next stitch, increase. Now into the next 8 stitches, we're going to single crochet 1. Into the next stitch, increase. And then now we're going to repeat this pattern of 8 single crochets followed by an increase another 4 more times for a total of 5 times. Into the last 4 stitches, single crochet 1. At the end of this row, you should have a total of 60 stitches. Now starting row 8, chain 1 and then turn your work. So for the first 9 stitches, we are going to single crochet 1. Into the next stitch, we're going to do an increase. And then repeat this pattern of 9 single crochets followed by an increase another 5 times for a total of 6 times. At the end of this row, there should be 66 stitches. Now starting row 9, chain 1 and then turn your work. For this row, we're going to start creating the arm slits. So first, we're going to start with 10 single crochets. After your 10th single crochet, we're going to chain 2. 1 and then 2. Now we're going to skip 15 stitches, so you could turn your work to look at the stitches better. So this right here is my 15th stitch, so we're going to single crochet into the next stitch. And then we're going to follow that with 15 more single crochets. After your last single crochet, we're going to chain 2 again. 1 and then 2. So now we're going to skip 15 stitches again. So this right here is our 15th stitch, and then we're going to single crochet into the next stitch. And then we're going to do 9 more single crochets to complete this row. At the end of this row, you should have a total of 40 stitches. Now we're going to go on to our next row, so make sure you do that chain 1 and then turn your work. For row 10, we're going to start with 9 single crochets. And then into the next stitch, increase. Now repeat this pattern of 9 single crochets followed by an increase another 3 more times for a total of 4 times. Make sure that you crochet into those chains in the arm area. So it might be a little difficult to insert your hook into those chains because they might be a little bit tight, but just slowly wiggle your hook in. You could also use your nail if you would like. So I have just gotten into the first chain, so I'm going to do my single crochet. And then now I'm going to go into the next chain, and then another single crochet. And then now I will just continue crocheting on like normal. At the end of this row, you should have a total of 44 stitches. And now instead of chaining 1 and turning our work, we're going to slip stitch into the first stitch of the row. So now we're going to slip stitch into this first stitch. And then this will now connect our pieces together. So now to go on to the next row, row 11, we're going to chain 1 and then now turn our work. So for row 11, we're going to do 5 single crochets, and our first stitch is not going to be that chain 1 or slip stitch. We're going to go into this stitch right here. So into that stitch, we're going to do our single crochet and then follow that with 4 more single crochets. And now into the next stitch, we're going to do an increase. And then following that, do 10 single crochets. And then now into the next stitch, we're going to do an increase. And then we're going to repeat that pattern of 10 single crochets followed by an increase another 2 more times. Now into our last 5 stitches, single crochet 1. At the end of this row, you should have a total of 48 stitches. Now to end this row, we're going to do that slip stitch again into the first stitch. And then we're going to chain 1. And then turn our work. So now for row 12 and row 13, we're going to single crochet 1 into every stitch in the round for a total of 48 single crochets. Make sure at the end of row 12 you are slip stitching into that first stitch, and then that you chain 1 and turn your work to start the next row. So this is what it looks like after row 13. I haven't finished it off yet because I want to check to make sure that I like the length of this dress, because if not, you could always add a row or 2 more of single crochets. So I'm going to dress my Miffy really quick and see how it looks. So I think the length of this dress is pretty good. So now all I'm going to do is finish off and then weave in the tails. And with that, we have finally completed our Miffy. Now we're just going to do a quick check to make sure she stands. Make sure that the bottom of your feet are indented inwards like this. adjust the feet a little bit, and now we're just gonna stand her with all her other little friends, and she stands as she should. With that, thank you all so much for watching. If there are any questions, leave them down in the comments below, and I will try my best to answer them in a timely manner. If not, hopefully another fellow commenter can help. So until next time, bye!